I'm either some sort of idiot who's told how to be like this, whatever that is, and or secondly, that I plan this out, you know, sort of, I don't know, they get this weird idea. Some people love to believe in the conspiracy of rock and roll, and I've got to admit that Malcolm McLaren and people like that have kind of helped that wonderful idea along, but, well, I mean, it does get a bit wild, though, you know, you find that the enemies, you know, fear of music is claustrophobic, you know.
But at the same time,
limiting people's minds to really believing that people can actually just do it. You know?
Also, I mean, the ironic thing, though, is that, of course, your manager is one of the master schemers of all time with what he did with Kiss. I mean, if ever there was a situation where something was planned and decided upon and calculated to have a certain effect, he did it.
Yeah, but I think I know a lot of people would never agree with me on this point, but this is a very personal opinion, which you know, isn't even that heavy. You know, it's just personally, I believe, I'm almost certain those sort of things arrive when the music isn't always what everybody wants it to be, or I don't know really how quite to say it. See, I never really been into heavy metal. I liked some heavy metal when I was a kid, like Iggy and the Stooges. That's heavy metal.
Yeah.
I like that. But a lot of other stuff I really don't like, and I don't know. A lot of other people, it doesn't matter, but to me, that I just can understand Bill Aucoin working that group like that, because that was how they were going to survive, really, to make a good record.
Yeah.
He had to keep them hanging around till they were going to make it. And that's a manager's job. And, of course, managers are hooker by crook, because they have to be, really. I mean, it's all right for me to sit there and be idealistic, but a lot of the time you have to be, you know, you do have to be pretty cutthroat and stuff. But, you know, there again, now people could take that sort of word totally out of context. Cutthroat. I mean, I just mean actually fairly straightforward, honest, to the point. That's cutthroat to most people, because they can't stand honesty, they can't stand people to the point, and they just can't stand anything direct. So, you know, I don't know, personally, I don't know, just people just love to dream about the old, they magicked it into our minds, you know, and some reason, because of Bill and just because of the way I look, and I've been around for a while, and I'm obviously into the way I dress or something dumb, I don't know. People sort of imagine that we're sort of concocting this thing, but I mean, I don't know really, you know, if we were concocting this thing, I'd be on my third, nearly fourth album by now. You would have had 4 covers without spiky hair, not a hint of leather, definitely no big red, black and white graphics, and, you know, nothing particularly, not lavish, I'd just say full of colour, full of life and stuff, because the life would have been kicked out of it. So what I'm saying is, for me, what's most important is the music, and it is what I based the rest of me on. So if anything is concocted, it's the music, because I write it, and that's from where else everything stems. And
I guess that's
really the answer, and it's just a shame that, I don't know, it's such a shame that people can be so short-sighted as to think that Bill Aucoin could only be a business brain, when Kiss were very obviously a very showy, you know, well thought out, well put together thing. But actually, to be honest, I'm quite certain that was to do with the members of the group, who were extremely into image.
Yeah.
And as a manager, his job's to foster that, if he's going to be their manager. I mean, that's another decision, and that's, I suppose, what people talk about. But, you know, Christ, I mean, people will try anything to start out, and you have to. That's the point. You have to. You can't be frightened what people are going to say later. I mean, the very point for me is that Bill Aucoin has helped make Rebel Yell, and he also helped to make Dancing with Myself. He kept the Generation X alive and in contact with Chrysalis at a time when we looked very likely we weren't even going to have a group, let alone be able to do a third album. So there's lots of things that people don't see, and it's a shame, because they're the things that he really is the best at. He's best at being a human being and understanding people rather than product or items. I've heard, you know, those Cleveland type managers talking about their artists who's sitting next to them like the spaghetti, you know, another package of Ian for him, you know. Bill's never ever talked about me to anybody like that. And I think that shows integrity. So I know that's explaining it away, but it's a side of, most kids out there ain't never going to see that guy in action with the head of Chrysalis or something and see how he supports me against some of their more conservative ideas. Not to say that they don't try. I'm just saying, everybody who's like me faces some sort of
You mean there's
people trying to censor what's
the
going
record
on.
company has given you some disturbing moments or things that you've had to back up against?
In the last 3 years, Christ.
What sort of things have they attempted to do?
Well, I mean, everything's pretty half-hearted. I mean, if you know me, it's going to be, I mean, I'm the worst person to tell something I don't like to. Just the way my face goes. It's so hideous, It just looks like I've been sort of destroyed, but at the same time I'm up in anger and about to go mad or something. I don't know, no, they haven't really tried anything like wildly heavy. Not because otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here like this.
Yeah.
So it's obviously we won, but we won through the music. So that's the only way you really beat a record company is through having something that you're really happy with, and some reason they get really happy about it. And I know for a lot of them it's the music, and that's what counts. But of course, in the past, before this album, of course, there's always been those moments. I mean, like any sort of business person, they tend to try and want to own what they're selling. But unfortunately, you can't own a thing which only exists in the air and on plastic, and you might walk down the street, but you can't keep it contained in a little cage in a Chrysalis office. It just doesn't work, So they soon learn about that, and I think that's important, that you have to stick to what you believe in, even if you might possibly be totally wrong. I think it's much more important that it'd be very easy for me to come to the States and not have spiky hair or something. I could go around the subway a lot easier. No one would recognise me, because when you've got blonde, sticky up, spiky hair, I mean,
Yeah.
in New York, where most people got dark hair, I mean, it isn't that special really, but it's
a
just,
combination of
people
everything.
watching everybody in Manhattan, so they're watching everybody, so they see anything a bit out of the ordinary, So it'd be very easy, but I don't think things being easy is really, that's not what the album's about. I mean, certainly that's not what my songs have been particularly about, for a number of years, so.
Do you feel that New York is home to you now?
Well, yeah, in a way, because, I live here for
Right.
real, and I've got friends here, and I know the place, and, well, beyond that, it's, if I feel good, then that's home, so, yeah, I guess it is home.
Because I remember.
I've got my ghetto blaster here, it must be. And my guitars, yeah, this must be.
I remember reading, and one can never judge these things fairly by the press, which is why I'm going to ask you this. When you first moved to New York, it was almost as if, certainly in the opinion of the English press, it was like, well, we kicked Billy out of England. We didn't want him hanging around anymore. I remember what I was reading was that you very much sort of arrived here on a lot of negative energy from the UK.
Well, what kind of happened is some of the English magazines, we released our album late autumn, and around that time there's always a bit of a slowdown in the music industry on what to write about, so they made a big hoo-ha about our album. There was a lot of new young writers, and they were really very fair to us, and they did a great job. But of course, you can't prevent groups breaking up, and that's what happened. And of course, it upset a lot of people because they'd sort of put their reputations or whatever on the line. But of course, personally, what they're missing is the fact that what's important is that they put themselves on the line, not the fact the group broke up, because the group didn't break up. The group's sitting here. I'm the only person out of Generation X writing and making his own music, hook or by crook, and that ain't like a big deal or nothing, but it's just like the truth. And like sometimes, it's good to let people think they've got you in a hole, right? You know, a bit like Sex Pistols signing to A&M.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day they would give them 75,000 to get off.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Well, I've been paid a lot of money since I left England. And brother, you know.
How did you feel when you
and
first...
I didn't get, I got a lot of respect in England, and I got a lot of love, but I get that here too, you know, so I'm a very lucky person, you know, that I can be this way. And I got, when we went back to England and played there, Steve played with me there, and Judy, we had a sell-out show. The works, you know, the write-up was great in the papers. I think it's just a general thing, you know. People, for some reason, people don't think rock and roll's important anymore. They hate it. Well, I never wanted to be in a popular sport. I never wanted to be top of the class. You know, my report always said idle. IDLE.
Yeah, right.
That's why I call myself.
Yes,
idle,
right.
really.
Oh.
Like to get such a kicking. So I don't know. You know, it's not like I know what happened. I know what newspaper politics are about. I know what music biz politics is about. I know what group politics are about. So I know what happens, and I know the bullshit that goes down, and bullshit's all part of it. So great. I mean, they wanted it to look like that, rock and roll on the run. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's nice if you haven't got a confectionery shop at the top of the charts. I bet they're dying for a little bit, a squeeze, an inch of rock and roll in England, because there's a lot of kids there who ain't going to sit about singing about Karma Chameleons for much longer. I mean, we came out of a very heavy time, and that time is definitely not gone in England. So, anyway, they're having a little holiday at the minute, but underneath it all, there's a few heavy people sitting about getting it together, I'm quite certain, just like we did. So we were sitting about for a good 3 years plotting, gunpowder, treason, and plot. And some of them writers were very happy when the whole thing fell apart. It's always great to see something, but they didn't quite realise what we'd won and what they were giving up. And yet, with all of that as what propelled you into action, here you are in this country, which most of not just England, but most of the world considers, I mean, this is Babylon. Yeah, great. I'm from Babylon, I gotta get away to Babylon, I just can't stay. But you know what I mean? Is that not sort of strange to you, that coming out of something that had a lot of dissent as its cause and as its way of operating, and what you're looking to find coming out of England again, but yet you're here, and this is, this is the land of margarine, blandness. Well, English doesn't people bother you? English people picked a lot off of the Romans, and gunboat policy still exists here, and that's just the way big powers act. So the British, still walk about thinking they've got a big, empire and stuff. So English people think they invented the word decadent in Babylon. So it doesn't faze you to be in this country, in this. I mean, rock and roll music has always been about decadence and revoltingness and ordinary, horrible things that our sort of society propels on everybody. But at the same time, I don't know, that's what our worlds are about. I don't think they're any more materialistic or anything else. I mean, a lot more people in the world spend a lot more time just looking around for something to eat, let alone than sitting around talking about whether we're decadent or not. So, but I know what you mean. So, really, the point is, you see, is that, sure, we live in a pretty weird society, but I'm a very definite part of that society, and I'm not going to try and walk out now. I made myself part of it by writing music and doing it publicly, and, I'm not going to go off on a little island and commune with nature now, I've got to be part of this schlock. But I think this schlock's really exciting, really, and there's a hell of a lot of great people around, and you can get really excited, and you can do so many good things, making records and stuff. It's a real bad process that's led to people working in those factories for virtually nothing and long hours and that. But I hope they know that what they give back in human relief is a hell of a lot more than they probably realise. I mean, I buy a lot of records and they make me very happy, so I don't know, there's good and evil with it. And I think that's what you want. I think. Are they of American artists, some of the records that you buy? Yeah, Gramps, Alan Baker. Iggy Pop, Velvet Underground, something like that.
That's true. That's American music.
Talking Heads, yeah. Good music. Tommy James, that's American music.
You didn't hear that record in England
Fuller?
at first, did you? The Tommy James
Yeah,
stuff?
I did, yeah.
God, I never knew if it made it over there or
Oh, yeah, it's
not.
massive. Big disco hit, that was.
Uh-huh.
That's what disco hits used to be like.
I remember that. I remember the
I
little...
mean, it's things like that made me really realise how important sort of discos and stuff are, club scenes, and of course punk rock was all to do with club scenes, so it's pretty obvious, but just the power of a dance record, just what it does to people, it's really exciting. And our music was made for two things. It was made for your heart and for your body, so what better than to learn off those weird records that sound great in discos? I mean, there's some brilliant things around today that are like that. You can't play them at home, but in a disco they sound fantastic.
Yeah.
Tommy James always sounded great on a record, and that was always worth having, I don't know. But I like Question Mark and the Stereons, all them sort of weird groups. They really added a lot. They gave England a view of other people's culture through American eyes that I don't think English people could have imagined, that sort of transmutation at the time, you know what I mean, really?
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting. And Gene Vincent, all those people, Eddie Cochran. I mean, it's great. And I think there's an original attitude came from America, and there's one that a lot of English people have, which is an element of self-preservation, but with the general context of the whole society in mind, right? So, I don't know, I know I'm pretty individualistic, but I'm not going to sit here saying I'm all right, Jack, so...
So
don't worry.
When you first got here, though, for the most part, the original Generation X singles hadn't been played on the radio, and it took quite a while for Dancing with Myself. It was a very slow process. I mean, was there a period of time where you kind of wondered whether or not you were going to be able to transfer your career to this country?
Well, you see, that's the funny part of it. I didn't really think about it that much. Wasn't relevant.
Mm-hmm.
I was really going through, a lot of personal things which were so taking up my time. Just moving here, just living in Manhattan, not knowing anything. I mean, it's a really, really weird, strange place when you're on your own, rather than exposed to so much. It's just like getting bombarded. I mean, it's hard enough after being here a few years. I'm used to it, but
Yeah.
wow, So I was really spending a lot of time getting myself just living here and writing music and stuff. And I was working with a guy called Phil Hawke, who worked with Alan Vega. I
Phil
wrote
Hawke.
It's So
Yeah.
Cool on the first album. And we were planning on doing some things which didn't quite work out, but we learned a lot from each other. But that's what I was doing. So in a way, I just don't. I never think of career. Career. What is it? I don't have a career. My dad has a career. I don't think even he's got one actually, but he talks about things like that. I don't know. It's just I never thought of it like that. I was really, I don't know. I've always felt pretty close to American rock and roll. So, rock and rollers, real dream heads, dream cases. Once they're in New York, it's like, yeah, I'm here. Very gutter as well, and it can be both at the same time. And once you've handled a big place like that, it's just minute differences that make places differently. So I was a lot more worried about whether or not I was going to be able to write songs with other people, if I was ever going to be able to write a song again, whether I cared about writing a song, even things like that were what was getting me. And that's really what I'm much more interested in solving. Because that really is my answer. My answer is, do I want to write another song? Will I be excited if I did? And thirdly, is it worth the effort, And so I was just looking around, just like when we started Generation X, there was no money involved. There was no career. There was no Billy Idol lead singer of... it was Billy Idol just being himself, hanging out and finding out and starting to move, and work his way into it and figure out where he wanted to go. And that's what I was doing. I wasn't going to, I don't know, there's all this sort of instant sort of idea about this sort of solo career, I mean. I don't know how you can be solo when, you know, you've got 5 of the best people playing musician, you know, instruments around. You're right, it's very difficult. It's not like that. I mean, so I never agreed with that stuff. I never saw it as a solo career or anything, you know. It's like solo careers. That's pretty, it's almost as good as lead vocalist, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, you can understand when people say that. I mean, all of a sudden, you change countries and a band that people had known as a band suddenly ceases to exist, or in the opposite order. But those two things put that together, and it's like,
right.
Well, here's this guy. What's he going to do?
Just one era, a silent era, and they're the dead next door. Well, Generation X had ceased to exist long before, half the people in the world think it broke up. So, I mean, to me and Tony, I remember the Generation X was the initial group. Mark Laff, Bob Andrews, me, and Tony James, and that was the real Generation X. And the ones that were after it were really, quite honestly, you know, if you want to talk about a solo career, that's just, you're looking at it right in the face. You know, I always made records with whoever I wanted to do it with at the time. If they wanted to play, great. And I write songs and I've got ideas, and so, you know, I mean, it's just people split things up all the time. I mean, you know, England was a wasteland for rock and roll just around that time because it had all been, or there was all this new romantic stuff. So what the hell, you know, what the hell was I going to do? I was going to, you know, wind out my life just drinking in some dumb bar somewhere, just being photographed by the Daily Mail because I once had a hit record in 1979 with King Rocker, and I mean, you know, hell, I don't want that. I'd rather, it's good to be anonymous, you know, it's good, man, especially after those few years and all the trash that went down. Mm-hmm. You know, we really got a lot of trash, music biz, rubbish, and it's great to go back to being anonymous and to get here again, where I think it's absolutely brilliant to be able to have people playing around you, let alone play in front of 3,000 people. It may not seem that much to some people, but I tell you, it's a hell of a lot of people if you're standing there, and it's great, the reaction. And when you feel that, I don't know, it's great. I think it's worth every moment of coming here, and this is the sort of excitement I believe in, and that's what I want.
The potential, I mean, you know, the potential for the kind of audiences of, you know, where you don't have to look a certain way to get into a concert, which is always the thing I remembered about going to punk shows in England.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I would be there from New York doing some stories, and it would be me and 800 punks.
Yeah, right.
And like, God help if you walked in with sort of, you know, chinos and stuff. It's you know, you'd be kicked.
But it's still like that, really.
Well, that's what I'm saying, in England, but it's not like that in this country.
Yeah,
it's never... I mean, and I would think, just as a performer, that is, in a way, it must be a relief for you to know that you can, you know, that anybody who wants to can come and see you without any kind of, you know, having to be a certain, pressure, exactly, right.
Because, I mean, well, that's what I think is great, and of course I like it when people want to, you know, have a certain idea about the way they look, certain idea about records they like, you know, those sort of tastes. I like it when people have taste. If they really don't want to change at all, that's really up to them as well. That's the type of taste, I guess. So I think it's fantastic, because, I mean, there's no real pressure. But, of course, I really do think that, you know, sort of part of being excited about the world is exciting yourself to a certain degree, and silly things like clothes and that have been one of those things that English kids have been able to use as a real great escape, and also as a way into yourself to find out what makes you tick, what your identity is. So I think that a lot of American kids are actually getting a lot more like that again. I think that even in the last 2 years it's become heavily like that, and I know MTV may well have been responsible for propagating a lot of the fashions that you see around, but I think it's even bigger than that. I think it's just that the new generation aren't willing to tolerate being handed hand-me-downs from Big Brother, you know. Mm-hmm. I don't want their scratched up Doors records, you know.
Yeah.
I want my own Doors.
Exactly.
I think that's what's going to happen. I'm certain there's got to be some really underground bands rehearsing somewhere who are going to do something wild in America musically. because it's really happened in England, a lot of it. And it's just about the right time for America to come crashing out of nowhere. And I don't know, to be here now, right now, and making music in the States and being part of that feeling, well, that's exactly what 1977 was like. You were part of something you didn't even know the whole of.
When you've gone back to England, have people come up, they've obviously seen that you've been successful. Have they come to you and said, why don't you live here anymore? Why don't you move back here?
Oh yeah, people always say that. But I mean, I always say about school, so he wants to. And of course, I never lived in England all my life anyway. I lived in the States when I was a little kid. My sister was born. She could have been an American, with a dual passport.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so all my relations are here. My mother's Irish. We lived in Ireland for a little while. I feel there's as much Irish as I do English in a way. My mother's so totally Irish. I mean, there's lots of things like that. So I can't stand patriotism like that. That sort of blind. And I don't know. I just see all those things as just an element of just no real trust in themselves, no real confidence, and they're not willing to expose themselves to other cultures, whatever they are. I don't give it. Personally, that's never frightened me. I moved about a lot when I was a kid, so I got used to it, I guess. So it's not that hard. And the only thing that's hard, of course, is sticking to your own personality. But of course, I've had 24 years experience of that, or whatever, 27 now, 28 or something, in England, 24 when I came here, And, that's enough for anybody. All the best people, D.H. Lawrence, all them sort of writers and that, they went and lived in South America. That's the next stop. That's where everything's happening is.
Yeah, right.
But I don't know, it's just a lot of jealousy in England, not necessarily to do with what I'm doing, just to do with that kind of holidays in the sun aspect of being a well-known artist, a performer, celebrity, I don't know. But I haven't had a holiday for 4 years. I had more holidays than Generation. I don't know really. I don't really know what people expect. I just think people get caught up in time waves, time emotions, and they stay there. Well, kiss me deadly then, well, they still haven't got me. And I'm saying Rebel Yell, it's sort of like that. I don't know, I'm not going to stop just because a few other people decide that it's not hip to... I don't care about their rules. That wasn't what punk rock was about. It was about living your own rules. And I know what people say, but I know if they really got into Rebel Yell, they'd soon have to change their mind. Because I think it says as much about England as it does here,
The album in particular, the album as a whole, or that song in particular?
No, the album as a whole says as much about England. They're pretty linked in terms of media and a lot of the instant type cultural things, TV and stuff. I mean, they're kidding themselves if they think they're not. I know they do. English people know they're caught up in it, so there's no sweat anyway. It's just it's some sort of weird thing. They got to have something to write about. It's a very small place.
Well, I
don't even know why they bother writing about me. It's amazing, just to say those things.
What does the term Rebel Yell mean to you?
I
mean, an American hearing that without knowing that there's any music behind it, you immediately see a Confederate flag, and there's a whole sort of host of historical references that come along with that.
Yeah.
Not all of them so terrific either.
No, I think that's the idea, really. Just like taking White Wedding and mutilating that, or rather making people see what it really can all be about, in the worst possible way in that case. And with Rebel Yell, it's the other way around. It's the absolute positive of a situation which could be completely negative. But they've got so much trust and confidence going. But the only problem they've got is that human emotions, human beings are winding down. They can't handle it anymore. So the rebel cry, I see it like that. Last gasp of an idea, But some last gasps end up, babies' first gasp is complete life. So I don't know, I see a sort of double thing in it. But really, Rebel Yell's really about, although these people might be grasping at things, they really are very, very strong personalities. And I do think that a lot of kids these days, I know they can be as naive about some things as other people, but they know a hell of a lot more about how people try to hoodwink them. And so they're just a lot more cynical in lots of things. They just don't let a lot of things happen to them. And it's that sort of strength I wanted to talk about, rather than the sort of other side of people who are weak and go along with culture because that's all they've got. This is songs about people who are making a last cry, but on their own terms. And I think that's what England's doing right now, and that's what I'm doing right now, and that's what I think America's doing, is trying to re-establish itself or its people or whatever with a real feeling of belonging or something.
And yet, when when I got to the last song on the album, that's a very chilling song, and it kind of ends on a scarier.
Yeah.
You're not yelling at that point.
Yeah.
I mean.
You don't need to yell, do you? Then the quietest bits make you worry. I don't know. It's just that song's not even about nuclear war. Nothing. It's just about
to me it was
accidents. Most weird, horrifying things.
Well, to me, when I listened to it, I just got a terrible sense of loss.
Yeah.
I mean, that was what. And as I said, to the idea of ending an album that way is, in a way, if you are, sort of expressing yourself as yourself, playing by your own rules, that kind of hints at the option of that. You may sometimes not have that much choice in the matter.
Yeah, right. Well, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, like in The Next Door, it's an error. It's not a planned thing, and that's quite a lot of the difference between things like White Wedding, which you talk about very planned things. So a lot of my other songs are generally about things which come out of the blue, they're accidents or that change people's lives, just by propagating a lie or something, that kind of thing, So a lot of these songs have been more about that, sort of how human beings interrelate and stuff. And I don't know, human beings so fickle that The Dead Next Door is certainly, I think, it's almost a way, what we were trying to do really is start the album with two songs. The positive and the death song. They're both at the end and the beginning,
At the moment, I mean, I've just played it a very few times. The songs that I like best are Blue Highway and Catch My Fall.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
I don't know whether, I think it's probably, at this point, it's probably the sound rather than what they may or may not say,
No,
But I think most people, you tend to react on sound.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I don't really, I do write lyrics, I do want people to understand them, but, I never, if you ask me some David Bowie lyrics or something, I could do bits of them, but I can't remember all of Heroes, and I'm certainly not going to try, what the hell do I want to... It's like that. I think people should create their own songs, even to use my chords, I do. I change the words, I change the melodies, I don't always do it on purpose, sometimes it just happens, but I think you should do that, and I've certainly found that some of the best things people have thought about songs and got them wrong was the best, so I really think that slight bit of uncertainty with words is great, and I think really the attitude of the song should be in the rhythm or whatever. That's what we try to do. It's a lot of what getting from that kind of thrashy Generation X to the Dancer Myself was the attempt to control emotions, to control the way our music was, not just let it be whatever we felt like at the time. What I wanted to start doing was twofold, propagate actual existing continuing ideas and then the effervescent ones at the time,
Well, there's a lot of control, a lot more control on this album.
Yeah.